phrases that I do not like is when people respond with whatever. It's one of those things that it's like, whatever. Like, it can go so many different ways. What's the
Honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? Whatever.
Whatever. Oh man, I don't like that one. Yeah, especially the response like that, because it's like, I'm asking for a decision, I'm asking for a choice, and you're basically, I don't know, it sounds like zero interest.
How was school today? Oh, whatever.
No, I specifically asked you to know more about what the question is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked you.
What would you like me to write on this blank check? Oh, whatever.
Whatever.
Oh, that's a good whatever.
Whose name should I put? Whatever. Yeah, too bad it's for $2.
Blank, like, who writes checks? Do checks still exist?
Yeah, I have them.
Do you have them?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I do.
And
when I first got a checking account, I used to write a check every once in a while to like my little brother for like $10 million.
Okay.
Be like, here's a check for $10 million. And he's like, well, what am I going to do with this? I'm like, well, you can't cash it, first of all.
Yeah.
But just so you can say that you got a check for $10 million.
Life in the Dromarski family was different than my childhood. If that's what you were doing. So, there you go. Just writing $10 million checks back and forth.
But you know what, though? I think, the odd time, there's the odd place where it's applicable to write a check for processing.
Yeah.
Because not every place accepts e-transfer.
Sure.
Right? Or e-transfer limit.
Yeah.
It's limited.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. The topic today is caring. Talking about care. And I think whatever, that phrase, would apply to not caring.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine being a little carefree.
So if whatever's the not caring response, what's the caring response? Just giving a proper answer? Forget about it.
I think... I don't know, what would be the way I do it? It would probably have something to do with adamant response to, this is exactly what I want. I don't know.
Yeah, I think kind of what the heart of what we're talking about is just actually caring enough for others and giving an opportunity to be heard, but also at the same time being willing to share from the heart.
I have a great example.
Okay.
By the way, we care enough to let you know who we are.
Absolutely. I'm Dan Dromarski.
And Dave Dawson. This is episode 8 of Gospel in the Game. Was going to be episode 7, but whatever. We're not going to actually tell you the story.
Who's counting anyway?
Of really what happened there. But we've enjoyed this series so far. Hopefully you have as well. You and your wife ever do the love languages thing, book or whatever, test years ago?
We've had discussions about it. My daughter recently went through a 1-year program with Bible school, and they talked a little bit about it. And we had a conversation around our dining table about what our, which way you do the love languages. Yeah, but go ahead and share.
The 5 love languages, or whatever. And so physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, and gifts.
Yeah,
are the 5 love languages. Generally, the way you give and receive love is different person to person.
Yeah.
I have I guess I can share a story of a roommate I lived with years ago. So we had completely opposite love languages. And I'll tell you how that turned out in a little bit. But first we'll get to today's verse. Matthew 5:16, in the same way let your light shine before others, they may see their good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So the topic of caring today for others is all about glorifying God. Yeah. That's ultimately the theme of how you want to care for others.
Yeah.
Episode 7 was pride. We talked about pride being selfish. Yeah. This is about being selfless.
Yeah, and caring for others can be shown in different ways. Like you were just saying with your story about like you display things. Not everyone not only cares the same way, but also wants to receive care differently.
So the 5 love languages. My roommate and I, my top 2 love languages, at that point in time, I think we were 10 years ago when we were living together, mine were words of affirmation and physical touch. His were acts of service and quality time. So the way that we would interact with each other in the house and engage in conflict was different. He was a little more silent. I'm obviously a little more open with explaining and sharing how I feel. Expression. There's a good word. So, if we were in conflict, he would, whatever, he loved to cook. He'd make a dinner. Hey, let's sit down. Let's chill out tonight. Maybe watch a game or watch a movie or whatever. Where I'm like, dude, you could have just said I'm sorry and given me a hug.
Yeah.
Right? So understanding how another person engages in conflict, needs to feel affection, give affection, makes a big difference in how you can care for others.
Yeah.
Because if you are using your ability to care and someone's rejecting that, and you're thinking, oh, well, they're kind of a jerk, but that's not their primary way that they receive love. So they may not feel the weight of exactly what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You know what? When we talk about certain subjects, sometimes I just gotta like you have that little flip in your mind of like different things that go along with it and stories and events and
like a rotisserie.
Yeah,
like a piece of chicken
like
is cooking.
Chicken.
That's what I was thinking as you were doing the hand signal, which you can't see. It's not a video podcast yet.
Dan's thinking about all these flashbacks in his life of different family events and life events, and Dave's focusing on
like
the
writing
chicken
$10 million checks to his brother.
There's a chicken rotating on a spigot
that I'm using binoculars to look at.
That's right, exactly. Well, it's what, it's not always in conflict about showing how you care for someone. Sometimes it's just about care. My son randomly brought home for his mother like a Cinzeo cinnamon bun, just because he could. And I
forgot to tell you, he didn't have breakfast. Well, that's why I'm thinking of chicken and cinnamon. Anyway.
But my wife texts me and she says your son just randomly brought home like a cinnamon bun for me, knowing that I love these things, I like these things. She goes, he is 1,000% your kid when he does stuff like this. That's like your traits come out, and just like he could probably because he's seen it growing up. First of all,
sure.
But at the same, his way of showing love is just randomly
gifts.
Gifts.
Or acts of service,
and totally. And it's like everyone kind of has their own formula with it.
Sure.
And it's interesting how you don't learn that about someone until it happens. And so often we wonder about personality types, and we can do all these different tests and other things for people. And then we're like, all of a sudden someone does something and you're like, oh, that's how they care for it. And with sports, often, you might say to yourself, well, I'm an athlete, even with my teammate, with my coach, with the different people that are part of my team, how do I care for them? How do I express that I have an interest in not what they do, but also who they are? And you'll see it sometimes in the strangest of ways.
Yeah, and I love that story because in a similar capacity, I have a friend who their primary love language, and I'm going to go back to this because I really believe it is a science in really having great relationships. If you study how somebody gives and receives love, it'll allow you the ability to have stronger relationships. Their gifts was their primary way of showing affection. So on my birthday, this person would give me this elaborate gift that I know that they've spent weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks creating.
Yeah.
For me, gifts, number 5 on the list.
Yeah.
I could care less about gifts.
Can I guess what your number 1 is?
Well, I already told you my number 1 was.
Okay. It's way up there. What was your number 1?
I don't know. What's my number? You have to go back and listen, or you can just guess right now. Tell me what it is.
I'm saying it's words of affirmation.
Okay. Part 1A, 1B with physical touch.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So her primary form of love, giving love, is gifts. So, and remember, that's my dead last.
Yeah, that's right.
I find it insincere based on whatever stuff years ago. To me, I just don't see like, okay, it's a gift. Great, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So, but when I'm receiving that gift from her, I have to remember that's her number 1 way she gives.
Yeah.
So if I don't receive that gift with the utmost excitement, I'm rejecting her. So I would go, wow, tell me more about how much time you invest into this. Where did you come up with the idea, right? Putting myself in her shoes to understand the importance of knowing that that's your number 1 way of giving love.
Yep.
And it's changed my perspective on how I do relationships now, realizing, okay, if your number 1 way of experiencing love is quality time, when we're together, I'm turning my phone off.
Yep.
Because you need me to be present for you.
That's right.
If your number 1 way of love is acts of service, when you come to my place, or if you in sports as an example, if the coach wants you to pick up all the equipment after a practice, and his number 1 way of receiving love is acts of service,
yeah,
by doing all that and then some, and then putting them away and then cleaning them and then locking them up, he is going to feel ultimate amount of love.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, it's even just a tangible thing. I think it's something that they can see that's evidence of it. We did this exercise that we do every year as being a chaplain, and where we have the guys write a handwritten thank you note. It's quite entertaining, actually, because we lay out all these thank you cards and we have them pick out these thank you
It's
cards.
a lost art.
It is. And they have to pick someone that they have to mail the thank you card to. It can't just be hand given.
Right.
And so they fill out this card, and we teach them how to do it in the right formula and context, where it's like, okay, to the addressee, and then first thing you write is, why are you writing this? So I'll give an example. It's like, okay, hey mom, today when I was making my own breakfast, living at my billet house, I thought about how much I used to enjoy and still enjoy when you make me my bacon and eggs, my favorite breakfast.
Sure.
So this morning I was thinking of you when I was making some bacon and eggs, and I was thinking, no one does this as good as my mom. And my mom would do that because I know she cares for me. So thank you. Got to include that in a thank you card. Thank you for caring for me and for being a great example to me by showing some love by what you did for me. It just made me smile today. And send it off. And it's so funny because they say, okay, now what do I do? Well, let's see your envelope. It says mom on the outside of it. If you put this in a mailbox right now, who's it going to? Whose mom is going to get that? Oh, well, I don't know my address or my postal code. Well, let's find it out. Why don't you text the person who you're going to send it to? So teach them how to properly put together a letter and send it off. But I think the best part of it is the response that you get. We actually just had a chapel session, and one of the guys, we talk about the different things we do throughout the year, and one of the returning players talked about doing the thank you card, and he sent it to his brother, and his brother said to him, I said, well, what did your brother say when he got it? He said, I know that you're forced to do this. That's what his brother said. I know that you're forced to do this, but you know what? This really meant a lot to me. And I've received text messages where it's like dads and moms. They're like, this is the nicest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Sure.
But it's the care and that love language that they've never heard before.
Right.
As we get older, I think, and as we have more responsibilities, the thank yous get less and less.
They do.
That's why I think sometimes our love languages change a little bit. You're all of a sudden like that words of affirmation or thanks.
Well, and we talked about pride in episode 7, right? And in talking about care in this one, sometimes people are so focused on correction, especially a coach. Hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Fix this, fix this. And there is an element of beauty to that because their goal is to make you the best that you possibly can be. Mm-hmm. As an athlete, you're looking at the mistakes you made, right? You're looking at your film going, how do I correct it? You're not necessarily looking to be told, hey, you know what? You did this really well today, even though that does make a difference, right? Yep. And the care that gets put into it. Someone who spends time working with you, you know, the thankless hours.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, and it's not always about the care positively. It's also, I'm telling you this because it's hurting you, or this is impacting your game. And it's hard sometimes for the athlete, or even us as people, to take that and receive that. Because in a relationship, we think that, oh, this person's trying to bring me down. But really, they're caring enough to tell us about it. That's like, hey, and you know, you are working on this, but by the way, your hair's on fire.
Yeah.
Like,
and remembering it's not an attack on our character.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, we didn't talk a lot about that in episode 7 in Pride, but if you didn't listen to it, go back and check it out. It was a great episode. But realizing if somebody's investing in you and they're spending time wanting to improve you, and it's coming from a spot of love, it's not an attack on your character. It usually means I care enough that I want to see you improve. I want to see you get better. Yes, your hair's on fire. Go dunk your head in the snow.
Yeah.
Go jump into a swimming pool or shave your head. One of the 3 options.
Yeah, that's right. You got
all
options
viable
here. You got
options
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the good aspects of care, I love the concept of the letter because I remember you telling me when you were walking through that and the reactions were powerful. What about when it doesn't happen, the result you're looking for? What happens when That's met on deaf ears.
Yep.
Maybe somebody who's heard enough the swan song. I've heard your apologies. I've heard your I'm going to be better. I
Mm-hmm.
want your behavior. What happens when it gets rejected?
Yeah, when it gets rejected. Well, and there's two sides to that. What happens when it's hard to care about something? Like, oh man, you're bringing this up again. Like, I have no interest in hearing about this yet again.
Binoculars again.
Yeah,
Why is this always the topic?
at the same time, it's like sometimes it's hard to care too because I don't know, you could almost feel tapped out. Or when you're receiving it, this person's harping on that. Okay, like I know that they're
I've heard it enough.
yeah, I've heard it enough, and yeah, I know they care, but now you're just annoying me. So many things in this world are a balance. They are. It's a teeter totter. You got to know when enough is enough, and that's all part of relationship as well. It's like understanding that we're all broken. We all need work. We all need improvement, and that brings back to like the coachability that you brought up in episode 7. Just as people, are we willing to be coachable to receive care, but also to care for other people? Because you're right, the rejection part of things, it's hard.
I want to ask you this then. Somebody who is a father, husband, billet, coach, business owner, like a number of hats you wear, you are in situations where you're caring for others and it's either received with great adoration or the opposite. So you're in a situation where you've told somebody time and time and time again, either, hey, they don't have a job, go get a job. I'm trying to, hey, stop this behavior. They're not stopping it. And they've told you, I've heard it enough. But you have the answer.
Yeah.
This is the solution if you just did this.
Yeah,
But they don't want to hear it, or they've tried and they just can't adopt it. What do you do?
totally. Some people might say and give me advice hearing that and say, listen, cool off, or don't harp on the person. Salvaging things with them is more important than making the point. Yeah, that's well and good. I think my response right off the hop just naturally is, I don't care. And you might say, well, that's insensitive. That's no. Listen, I care enough about you that I'm going to find a different angle and a different way in order to try and help you versus giving up on you. And I think too often we say, well, move on to the next guy. You know, Johnny doesn't want to hear you. He's not listening to anything you want to say. Just forget about him. Move on. He's a waste of your time. I think I care too much. And so I'm going to find a different way to get to Johnny because he's valuable. If he is also created in the image of his maker in the same way I am, then I'm going to do my best to fight tooth and nail for Johnny. Because some people get to the point where no one's fighting for them anymore. And so if I'm their last hope, outside of Christ, of course, ultimately, that's where I'm pointing. So that's my personality. How do I balance it? It's hard because often in each one of those categories, there's something happening. And my strength ultimately is found in my Savior, but God's provided different people. And God provides different people. My wife is a perfect example of that. Someone who shows care and someone who's willing to handle and take care of the things that I can't. If I can't race home and be there in time to make dinner or to take a kid to place B or do something. But since she's my partner in this and my equal, it's about having a relationship with you that's 100%. I always say the example is like marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is 100% and 100%. I'm giving 100% of myself to my wife and to the family unit. Everything out from that gets built out from it. And that 100%, someone's bubble is smaller than other people's bubble. I think by the grace of God, my bubble becomes a little bit bigger. But it's ultimately, it has to be, that foundation has to be there. And my relationship with Christ has to be 100%. Which builds my relationship with my wife 100%, which builds my relationship with my family of God, my support that's around me. And all of a sudden, it's amazing what you see, where all of a sudden you're like, okay, Lord, this part is really tough right now. And all of a sudden I get a text message. Hey, I'm praying for you in this part that I was just thinking about. Can I buy you breakfast tomorrow? And all of a sudden I go for breakfast and the person shares with me something that I needed to hear and I never asked. And it's like, wow, wow, okay, Lord, your fingerprints are on this, equipping me to continue on with this. And that's the motivation to keep reaching and to keep caring and helping, where all of a sudden the evidence of God's caring is overarching everything that I'm doing.
Right. And I love what you said, because I think in caring, God is the author of the unorthodox, right? So I think if you're listening to this and maybe don't subscribe to a faith-based life, if you look at the concept of faith, and maybe if you are from a faith-based life, it doesn't really have to be two sides. You think, okay, well, God's doing everything. My hand in it is I'm just going to sit around and watch God just work, right? Maybe if you don't subscribe to a faith-based life, you think, is that how it works? Like, you just sit there and this magical, mystical creature is fixing all these things in your life? No. Well, if you live in a faith-based life, sometimes we get so full of excitement. You've seen God work before, and you're trying to superficially recreate that by heroically, I'm going to go serve the homeless, and then I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go work with kids, and I'm going to go to single moms, and I'm going to stay up all night and cook and this and that. And you think, wow, look at me and my Christian superstardom.
Yeah, leads to pride.
Yeah, that's pride. Episode number 7. Go back and listen to that. So, I mean, it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
God, when we put our faith in him, will work through us. And as we take steps forward, he will work out the rest of the details. When you talk about your wife being your teammate, and, the two of you can do great things together, but what you can't do, God does everything else, and generally will do most of the other things if you take a back seat to that.
Yeah, and equip us to do things, to care, to serve, and sometimes it's really hard. Like, people, they're tough to care for.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very a good reminder where it's like, I've had times where in my life where I'm sure I've been hard to love and I've been hard to care for and I've needed a lot of work. And maybe I was a burden to someone. And at the same time, God equipped them and allowed them enough strength and energy and everything else in order to care for me when I was unlovable. And I think one of the things that's really important to mention here is not only the fact that care is a good thing, we need it. It's a necessity. There was an old study, and some of you might have heard of it before, where they had babies that were newborns that were not, they were basically changed, fed, put back into a bassinet, versus the ones that were held, cared for, sung to, fed, changed, all these other things. And they did it for like a month time. And the ones that were held and cared for slept better, ate better. Everything about it was good. And it's that care and attention is just such a necessity, being human. It's a need, not a want. Well, it might be a want.
Just had this vision in my mind that the ones who weren't as adults get sung to and held and have their diaper changed and cared for. But no, you're totally right. We as people are meant to be cared for, and we are meant to care for others, right? As much as we might feel, oh, I want to be cared for more. Well, maybe you're being cared for too much.
Yeah.
Maybe the reason why you feel unfulfilled is you're not caring for others.
Yeah.
And maybe the opposite of that. Maybe you're caring for others too much because you don't feel worthy of receiving care. Yeah. Right? It's a constant struggle in our society. We either want to be nurtured or we want to nurture others because we don't feel we're lovable, or we don't want to give help to others because maybe we've been burned.
Yeah, and it goes back to that verse. What's your intention behind it? Where it's like, in the same way, let your light shine before others. Like, are you here to make this about yourself? That's one thing that, okay, you want to go talk about pet peeves and other things. When people make things about themselves.
Right.
And it's like, okay, when you're showing care for someone, there's one thing to speak into experience and talk about your experience and how maybe things got through or how things worked out or didn't work out in order to give advice. But when all of a sudden the danger is never take someone else's situation and make it about yourself.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden the person feels unheard, unloved, uncared for, and that, look, there's no solution to this. It actually brings hopelessness.
Yeah.
It really does. And so
I have a great story about myself for that. I'm just kidding.
well, but you know what though? And it's about like even the other half of that verse. That they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. It's about giving God the credit. And you had talked a little bit earlier about it's like if you're not a person of faith, we don't want you to see God as a genie lamp.
No.
Because God's not a genie lamp.
No.
But a relationship with God is something that's precious. That's why I think we lean on it and we hold on to it so tight. In the scripture verse of where it says that a man finds a treasure in a field, and he goes and he sells all that he has in order to buy that field. We're heavily invested into this because we know the value of something. And that's really at the heart of caring. When we care for something is we know the value that is placed in someone. That's why we're willing to give up of ourselves in order to care for others.
Here's a great example when you talk about how the gospel applies to your life. This is the gospel in the game, so how the gospel applies to the game of sport, whether you're a participant, a viewer, a coach, whatever. You buy a gym membership. You go to the gym. If you just go to the gym and sit there and watch everybody, oh, wow, that guy's in great shape. Oh, that girl's in great shape. Boy, she can lift this, or man, that guy can squat this. That's not going to help you. You need to participate. You need to engage in, change your diet, do the exercises, get better sleep, do all these things to become a better person. Same with the faith-based life. By going to church, participate, looking around, going, wow, this music's great. Yeah. I'm a good Christian. I go to church. I might sing some songs and, look the part and then go home and not change anything in my life or not adhere to, read scripture, want to become a better person. That's the same thing, right? So an athlete can understand what it's like to make their body better for the battle, the same thing for the Christian faith. We want to equip ourselves as believers to become better people. How do we do that? By caring for others and by humbling ourselves. And I want to add my comment to your point there. I think an easy way to care for a total stranger, someone you see on the street, somebody you engage with in the grocery store, at the rink, at a stadium, wherever, the easiest way to show care is doing exactly what you said, not making a conversation about yourself.
Yeah.
I was in an exercise in a faith-based group a number of years ago where you had to tell someone how you felt, and the other person couldn't respond.
Oh.
They just had to listen.
Yeah.
And it trained me in my mind that if you're sharing a story, our automatic response usually is, well, I want to show you how much I care by reflecting your story to my life.
Yeah.
Well, here's what happened to me. You think it's a good thing. You know how often we do that as people? Every single time.
Yeah.
Where all you're doing is you're now taking the attention away from their story and their life and putting it on you.
Yeah. Here's another danger that I'll bring up. Often we ask people how they're doing, and we don't listen.
Mm-hmm.
In a grocery store, you come to a store clerk and they say, how was your day today? And you say, good. How was yours? Good. And then it's down to business. Did we really care?
Yeah,
it's being cordial.
Grocery stores, you're in a lineup or whatever.
Yeah,
but it's
it is a
difficult,
difference. But you know what though? Even in that situation, I'll throw it out to left field.
Sure.
And I'll be like, you know what? I'm really tired. It's like 9:30 p.m. I'm here buying milk. I'd really rather be at home. How was your day?
Sure.
And they'll usually respond and talk about their shift. And it starts this conversation, this engagement.
Yeah.
That's one of the dangers where we just kind of off stuff. But the other thing is listening. Part of caring requires listening. And listening actually shows the heart of caring. When you ask someone, saying, oh, you had a difficult time. Tell me more about that. Okay, well, this and that happened. This situation happened. Experienced loss or experienced this. And it's not necessarily always bad news, but good news too. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, no, that's good. And then just carry on to something. We have such shallow conversations so often that I think that we're actually robbing ourselves of good, deep relationships. And one of the, I guess you'd say, strategies of building a relationship is going deeper in the conversation and then retaining that knowledge for your next conversation. So that way, when you see the person next time, you know what? Hey, your uncle was sick.
Right.
How's he doing now?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the person's like, wow, you really cared. You cared enough not only to listen to me, but now you're showing care enough to ask about how my uncle is doing. It's just, it allows you to have that deeper and deeper relationships. And it really echoes what God wants with us. He not only wants us to have deeper relationships with each other, ultimately, he wants us to have a deeper relationship with him. And so if we're just like trying to skim the surface, oh, you don't want to, I'm going to spend some time in God's word today. I'm going to flip open, read Psalm 1. Okay, now I'm done Psalm 1. I've done, or like you had said your example, go to church or go do something.
Mm-hmm.
No, what is life of faith? And does it mean that I have to never go out and I can't do anything fun? It means I just have to stay at home and study. No, it means like, you know what? Just pause for a minute. Take some time. Listen to God. And just take those moments, and you'll find that sometimes those times of just listening are times where we really kind of get the most out of a relationship. I had a habit, I still have a habit of doing it, where I would start my day praying as I drive. And there's sometimes that I'll just...
Hopefully your eyes are open, though.
Oh, it is, absolutely, every time. And then...
I'm like, I've seen you on the road, the guys with the eyes closed.
But then I'll pause, and I'll just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's not during that time where I'm speaking that are extra meaningful, because I can ask for a lot of stuff and bring up a lot of things. Sometimes when I just listen, then all of a sudden all my heightened observation with everything around me, it's like, oh wow, that's a beautiful sunrise.
So 3 takeaways for you today for this episode I think will be helpful for your life. Number 1, whether you believe it or not and want to apply it for your life, I would encourage you, invest a little bit in the concept of love languages. And when you look at your friendships, if you're having difficulty in friendships, or you want to take your friendships to the next level in the level of care and caring for others, spend a little bit of time understanding what it is that makes somebody tick.
Yeah.
Whether it's a word that could encourage them or doing something nice for them, that's a great takeaway. Number 2, in conversations, spend less time making personal reflections to your life in a conversation. Listen. Don't worry as much about trying to relate to somebody. If you have to relate to somebody constantly, that might be a sign of something else. Just listen to them. If you want to interject, stop yourself. Train yourself to go, nope, it's not as important for me to interject. I just want to listen to you. Trust me, it'll change the way you engage relationships. And number 3, don't be afraid to spend a little more time investing in conversation. The grocery store, the bus stop, the arena, the stadium, wherever your repeated stops are, instead of saying good, ask that question. If it's somewhere you go back repeatedly, you're constantly going for lunch, you stop at the office, you're downtown, you're going across to this restaurant, you see this person every day, spend a little more time. You'll be shocked to see what the results will be that the Lord, if you subscribe to the faith-based life, the Lord will open opportunities for you to be a light in their life.
Yeah, and you know what? Sometimes it's in the simplest of situations. I go to a specific grocery store close to my place, and there's a guy who sweeps the floors and gathers carts. That's all he does. And I always seem to try and strike up a conversation with him about something. And I had asked him about how everything was going with his life, and because he was looking he just had a sad look on his face as he was sweeping. He said, my daughter's really sick. He said, that's all I can think about right now. I said, okay, well, like at home sick, like with the flu? And no, his daughter was having like medical episodes where she was having to be hospitalized.
Oh.
And they couldn't figure out what was going on. And they found out that she had like a tumor. And he's like, we're basically going to find out how long she's got. And I really want to be with my daughter right now, but here I am. So there in the middle of an aisle in a grocery store, I said, can I stop and pray for you and your daughter?
Yeah.
And it was just taking that moment to show care. And every time I see him, how's your daughter doing? Oh, she's doing better now.
Yeah.
And you know what? And just all the time, just kind of a little bit of, we tear up together. We say hi to each other, shake hands, and just have that moment. And he every once in a while will see me come, and he'll be the one that he'll Dan, let me tell you about this and that. And all of a sudden now he's done that and engaged that. And it's like, okay, First of all, I guess I got to keep coming to this grocery store, but even though the prices might be elsewhere.
Yeah.
But B, caring is at the heart of relationship. And I think those are great points that you brought up, Dave, because they're simple things that we can do in order to build into lives of others. And I think we're going to find, as we are willing to build into lives of others, we'll actually ultimately realize not only how much we care for others, but how much God cares for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Certainly anything but whatever. We are the Gospel in the Game, episode 8. You can follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, as well as download episodes. Listen to them wherever podcasts can be found. I am Dave, and he is Dan.
Yeah, whenever.
Whatever. We're meant to be together. I'll be there.
Okay, and now it's time. Quick, stop the pain, stop the pain.
No Shakira.